All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to go over the career of Shaquille O'Neal, the impact he had during his career, what he brought to the table, how great of a player he was overall. And let me be honest with you guys. What prompted me to do this video was the fact that ESPN came out with an all-time top 10 list a few weeks back, and Shaq was not on that list. And to me, I was just looking at that like, wow, I mean, like, how can you not have this man on that list? Shaquille O'Neal, I mean, this is a man that is a 3-time Finals MVP. Put up historically great numbers in his time period that he played in the regular season, playoffs, finals, the teams that he went to, in his prime to start off his career. All the teams he was on, they were championship level teams. They were championship contenders, if not championship winners, before he started to fade off. I was looking at that list. I mean, I was just thinking, like, who made this list? And no disrespect, but, they were debating about, Stephen A. Smith and them were debating about who should have potentially made the list. And they brought up Shaq, but he was making the case that he should be over Tim Duncan. That's not the player I would replace him with. I would have taken Oscar Robertson out of that list. Oscar Robertson, as great as he was, as statistically dominant as he was in his era, his lack of accomplishments, he has to be omitted from that list. Shaq has to be on there. But we're going to get into Shaq's career and what he was able to accomplish, just to prove to you why he should be a top 10 player of all time, or why he should be considered as a top 10 player of all time. So let's get right into it. All right, so to start off, Shaq, he grew up in Newark, New Jersey. And his stepfather, Philip Harrison, was in the military, so they moved him around a little bit. He went to Germany for a while. They came back, and they ended up settling in San Antonio, Texas. And by the age of 16, Shaq was already 6'10". That's pretty tall, man, for somebody that's only 16 years old. Shaq is really a gigantic dude, but that is when he started to actually play basketball on a serious level. He started playing for his high school team. The high school being Robert G. Cole High School. And in the 2 years he played there in his junior and senior seasons, he led them to a 68-1 record, and they won a state championship in his senior year. So after he graduated high school, he ended up attending LSU for college, and he played there for 3 seasons. So the LSU team, they played in the SEC conference, and every year he was there, all 3 years he was there, he made the All-SEC first team. In 91 and 92, he made the SEC All-Defense team. He also was the SEC Player of the Year in 91 and 92. And he was the overall NCAA Player of the Year in the 90-91 season. Every season they made it to the NCAA tournament, but they never were able to get too far. In 90 and 92, they made it to the second round, and in 91 they got bounced in the first round. But overall, Shaq had a very impressive career. Even though they didn't win a championship in college, he still stood out. He was very dominant, averaged a double-double each season, and that includes averaging 27 points per game in 91 and 24 points per game in 92. So he was a top prospect coming out of college, and he was the #1 overall draft pick by the Orlando Magic in the 92-93 NBA season. And his first year drafted onto the team, he averaged 23.5 points and nearly 14 rebounds a game in just his rookie season. And the Orlando Magic, they improved by 20 games. The year before, they were 21 and 61. And in Shaq's first year, they went 41 and 41. Now, that was not good enough to qualify for the playoffs, but that still gave them the confidence that they could keep growing and build around Shaq. So in his first year, he won the Rookie of the Year. He made the All-Rookie first team, and he made the All-Star team as well. So Shaq had a pretty dominant rookie season. And that would be the first of 14 consecutive All-Star games, not including the 98-99 season because there was no All-Star game that year. So if you take out that year, that would be the first of 14 consecutive years that Shaq made the All-Star team. And also, surprisingly enough, in Shaq's rookie season, that was his career high for rebounds in the season, averaging 13.9, and also block shots, averaging 3.5 block shots a game. He did that in his rookie year. That was his highest per game averages for those statistics in any season. So So going forward into his second season, Shaq upped his scoring average to 29.5 points per game. And the Magic, that was the year they also drafted Penny Hardaway onto the team. So they finished that season going 50-32. But they were bounced in the first round by the Indiana Pacers. They got swept. And then into the 94-95 season, Shaq averaged 29.5 points again. And that was good enough to lead the league in scoring that year. And the Magic, they finished that season winning 60 games. They were able to bring in Horace Grant that year. He came from the Bulls to give him a nice player at the power forward position. And they made a run all the way to the NBA Finals. But they ran into Hakeem Olajuwon and that Rockets team. And that season, there was nobody that was going to stop Hakeem Olajuwon. He completely dominated the playoffs that year. And he outplayed Shaq in the finals. So Hakeem was in his absolute prime. Shaq was starting to enter into his prime. But in that series, he wasn't really a match for Hakeem yet, all the way at least. So the next season, the 95-96 season, and let me correct myself, the season before the Magic won 57 games. This would be the season that the Orlando Magic won 60 games, the 95-96 season. And this ended up being Shaq's last season on the Magic. And they made it to the conference finals. They ran into Jordan's first full season back, and they were swept by Jordan and the Bulls. And then Shaq ended up getting traded to the Los Angeles Lakers going into the 96-97 season, which would be Kobe's first year as well. That's the year Kobe got drafted. And that Lakers team already had a little bit of talent on their squad with Eddie Jones and Nick Van Exel. They finished with a record of 56-26. And they were bounced in 5 games in the second round to the Utah Jazz, who ended up representing the West in the finals that year. So now we're going into the 97-98 season. So this would be the year that Kobe, he was coming off the bench, but he was giving you a glimpse of what he would end up becoming that year. He made the All-Star team for the Lakers, as well as Eddie Jones and Nick Van Exel. And including Shaq, they had 4 All-Stars that season in the 97-98 season, which was the most in the league. They finished with a 61-21 record that year, and they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, where they would run into the Utah Jazz again, and this time they were swept. And then in the 98-99 season, the lockout season, where there was only 50 games played, they got beat in, actually, I think they were swept in the second round, actually, by the San Antonio Spurs that year, and the Spurs went on to win the championship. So the Lakers had a lot of talent on their team. But in the first 3 seasons Shaq was on the team, they were still trying to figure out how to win. And that's where Phil Jackson came into play, because the next year they brought on Phil Jackson as the head coach. And, of course, with the development of Kobe Bryant getting better each season, that's what took them over the top. So by the 99-2000 season, the Lakers, they put it all together. Shaq was the MVP that season. He averaged almost 30 points per game, 13.5 rebounds. And the Lakers won 67 games that year. Shaq was the All-Star MVP that year as well. Well, him and Tim Duncan were co-MVPs. And they made a run throughout the playoffs. In the playoffs, Shaq averaged 30 a game. He was completely dominant in that playoff run. And in the finals, he averaged 38.5 points per game and over 16 rebounds per game in the finals. And they beat the Pacers in 6 games, and he was the finals MVP. And that would end up being the first of 3 consecutive finals MVP awards that Shaq won. The Lakers won in 2000, 2001, and 2002. And of course, in 01 and 02, Shaq's numbers ever so slightly started to decline, and Kobe started to rise up, and they became more of a tandem in those 2 seasons. And that also caused a bit more tension between them because, they both were all-time greats. And they both felt as though they were the alpha on their teams. But it was still viewed as Shaq's team. He did win the MVP in 01 and 02 in the finals. In 03, that was the first year that, in Shaq's career in general, that was the first year that Shaq did not lead his team in scoring. He still averaged 27 a game. Kobe averaged 30. And of course, Shaq also started to have different injuries year by year where he wasn't staying on the court for the full season. He was playing around 60, 65 games a year. So Kobe was starting to carry the team more. In the 02-03 season, they were bounced in the second round by the San Antonio Spurs, which was their rival during that era. The Spurs went on to win the championship in 03. And then in 03-04, the Lakers brought on an older Karl Malone and a little bit older version of Gary Payton as well. And they had high expectations that year. They were the team that was viewed to have the best chance to win the championship. They made it to the finals that year. And that was Shaq's lowest scoring points per game season up until that point. He only averaged about 21.5 points per game. But, of course, they had more talent on their team. But they made it to the finals that year, and they were beaten 5 games by the Detroit Pistons. And that was Shaq's last year with the Lakers. So then after that, Shaq was traded to the Miami Heat to team up with the young up-and-coming shooting guard Dwayne Wade. And in his first year there, they went from a 42-40 record to a 59-23 record. And they were beat in the conference finals by the Pistons in 7 games. And then the next season, even though Shaq missed a lot of games that season, I think he only played about 60 games that season, the Heat still finished with a 52-30 record. And by this time, D. Wade was the star of that team. And they ended up being able to make a run to the NBA Finals that year, led by D. Wade. And they were able to win a championship. So that would be Shaq's 4th championship overall. And then the next season, the 06-07 season, both of them had injuries, D. Wade and Shaq. In 07-08, Shaq ended up getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. And in the 08-09 season, Shaq made his last All-Star appearance in the 08-09 season for the Phoenix Suns. His last 2 seasons he played on the Cavaliers, and then he played on the Celtics in 2010-2011. And that's when Shaq tore his Achilles in his last year, and that was his last season in the NBA. But overall, just to sum up his career, he played for 19 seasons, and in those 19 seasons, 15 times he was an All-Star, 14 times he made the All-NBA team. He made the All-NBA first team 8 times. He made the second team twice, and he made the third team 3 times. He made the All-Defensive team 3 times as well. And most importantly, he was the MVP and also won the Finals MVP 3 times. So Shaq, to me, in my personal opinion, he should be recognized as a top 10 player all time. This is a man that averaged over 20 points and 10 rebounds for 13 consecutive seasons. And he averaged over 25 points at the very least for 10 of those seasons straight. So Shaq's run of dominance lasted for a lengthy period of time, and his overall resume speaks for itself. But that's just my view on it. That was my breakdown on Shaq's career. Hope you guys enjoyed. For those who are not too familiar with Shaq's career, hopefully you guys learned a lot. And as I always say, everybody have a blessed day. All glory be to God. Thank you again.